Make sure you guys like this video. Make sure you guys subscribe to this channel if you're watching this right now. If you're listening to this on the podcast, wherever it is, make sure you subscribe to our channels. That's the best way to help us grow this content and grow this space. We are presented by our partners over at Bet Rivers, and that means that it is time for us to get into this mock draft. So coming up first with the number 1 overall pick, we have Orlando on the clock, and that is going to be one Jeremy Woo making the number 1 overall pick. There's a lot of pressure here, Jeremy. A lot of pressure on this decision.
Oh, yeah, no, this is an easy one for me. I'm taking Jabari Smith. Not going to think about this too hard. For me, he's been the guy, since December when I went to see him. I didn't know as much about him coming into the season. Really got familiar with him, and I spent some time at Auburn, and I'm really convinced that he's the guy. To me, he's in a tier of his own ahead of the other 3 guys at the top. I think his shooting is just such a special skill. It's going to be really hard to block. I think we're overthinking the whole dribbling aspect of it, just because it's going to be easy for him to get it off. And I think a creative coach will find ways for it to work. And, knowing what we know about him as a defender and as a person and how much he cares and how much of a perfectionist he is and how hard he works. Like, if I'm Orlando, I just think he's the guy who I want to sort of set the culture, and I'm willing to grow with Jabari as my guy. So he's my pick at number 1.
So I want to know from any of you guys, is there anyone that would not take Jabari number 1? Sam, I know that you are in the camp of Chet and Jabari are kind of on that same tier. Who are you going with number 1 overall?
Well, it's interesting, and this is something I wanted to pose to Ryan, because I think that you guys had a situation a couple years ago with Luka Doncic versus DeAndre Ayton. How much do you care about fit when considering the number 1 overall pick? Or you just take the best guy, the guy that's number 1 on your board, or you just, at the end of the day, you have to consider, hey, we have Devin Booker already, and do we need another ball handler in here? Is there a better fit with a center maybe that can fit with us, right?
Yeah, I think that's certainly something that factors in more, Sam, on the team side than from what I've seen on mock drafts. You need obviously a balanced, competitive team, offense, defense, rebounding, passing, all those kind of things. So part of our thought process, right or wrong, and keep in mind there was some discrepancy, right? I got fired in preseason, and Igor Koshkov got fired after 1 year. Yeah. But part of our thought process was the balance, with Devin Booker in the backcourt, DeAndre Ayton in the front court, rebounding, defensive potential. Obviously, he wasn't a great defender at U of A, certainly improved in that area. And then, just the physical anchor on the interior. And then after we got Ayton, getting Bridges on the wing in that same draft to put in between them, we thought that was obviously criticized. Luka's been phenomenal. Those 3 guys and the Suns have done pretty well collectively. So that's why one of the things why it's so hard for a team. You're not drafting, in a vacuum, or it's easy to go. I think sometimes go back and nitpick and say, well, it should have been this guy. You need to bake all of that in and figure out when you hand the ball to the coach in training camp and say, look, play these guys, figure out how to play them together. How is it all going to work? And how are the guys going to complement each other?
Right. And I think at the end of the day, that's why I was I think I would, at the end of the day, if I was Orlando, probably consider Jabari Smith over Chet, despite the fact that I might have Chet at number 1 on my board.
So there it is. Jabari Smith, number 1 overall pick, which means we're going to the number 2 pick, which is Jeff Goodman drafting for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I have no idea where this one's going to go. We have our confirmed loose cannon making the number 2 overall pick.
Yeah, I'm not going Shaedon Sharp, so you don't have to worry about that. Even though I'm really concerned. And I do have a little bit of a love affair with Shaedon Sharp, the mystery man of this year's draft. But listen, Sam Presti's got a tough decision on his hands here. He really does. I mean, they need a lot. We know that. They've got about, 104 picks over the next 6 drafts, first-round picks. He's stockpiled them, kind of like Danny Ainge did a few years ago, and eventually he'll probably start moving them. But listen, on this pick, it's Chet or Paolo, and you couldn't look at 2 different players in scenarios, right? I mean, Paolo is the ultimate. You kind of know what you're going to get. He's going to come in and make an impact right away, and I think he's going to impact winning right away. Big, strong, athletic, fairly tough. And you got Chet, who, if you're a GM, you're scared as hell to pick because of looking at his body, but you're even more scared not to pick, because if you miss on a guy that's going to be a franchise player and a unicorn of sorts, and he could stay healthy and add 30 pounds, you could be looking at a dude that is like Porzingis-like in the offensive end and a hell of a lot better than Porzingis in the defensive end. He could be a dominant defender if he puts on 30 pounds. So I think here, if I'm Sam Presti and I'm Oklahoma City and I'm a small market, I roll the dice. I roll the dice and I take a swing on Chet Holmgren rather than going with Paolo, who I think will be an all-star. But again, with Chet, yeah, I mean, listen, you might get a guy who's out of the league in a few years because he can't put on and sustain the weight and physicality of the league. Or you may get a guy who's an NBA star.
So just so everyone that's watching this knows, we told our panel to have a pick made in 30 to 45 seconds. Goodman just rolled 2.5 minutes making the pick for Chet Holmgren. Matt, we got about 30 seconds. What's your take? Is that the right decision or the wrong decision?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a reasonable take. I mean, that's what everybody's projecting is going to actually happen. I do think it's a tough decision, and it's a good problem to have if you're Oklahoma City and you're Sam Presti, because I think between Chet, Paulo, and Jaden Ivey, all three are exceptional talents with a lot of upside, just all very different. It's sort of a pick your poison type of deal. Me personally, I really like Jaden Ivey. I think his upside is through the roof. Just his athleticism and burst makes him potentially special. But again, I don't know if there's necessarily a wrong decision here.
All right, so we are now moving on to the number 3 pick in this draft, which is going to be the Houston Rockets. That pick is going to be made by Sam Vecenie. And Sam, I think I know where you're going to go with this pick.
Yeah, I just want to note that I was the one that was worried coming into this about being long-winded in my answers. And then we have Goodman roll for 2.5 minutes. Look, this is an easy one for me. It's Paulo Banchero at number 3. Houston just needs talent at the end of the day. I don't love the fit of Alperen Şengün and Paulo Banchero in the front court, but I'm not convinced we've seen enough from Alperen Şengün on the defensive end to know for sure that he can be the kind of guy that can play in a playoff series quite yet. So at the end of the day, I'm taking the guy that I think is the best fit with Jalen Green, because that 2-man game, I think, between Jalen Green and Paulo Banchero has a chance to be genuinely special. Paulo Banchero's passing ability, I think, is maybe the most underrated skill that any player has in this class. Being able to run these inverted actions, 4-1, 1-4 ball screens with Jalen Green is going to be really, really special in my opinion. And I just am such an enormous fan of the mismatch nightmares that he's going to create on the offensive end for the Houston Rockets. So it's easy. It's Paulo Banchero at number 3 for the Houston Rockets.
Ryan, how do you feel about that?
It seemed like that's exactly what Houston's thinking. I'm seeing some of the reporting from Jonathan Givony and others last night. They made the deal yesterday with the Dallas Mavericks to bring in Christian Wood. Send out Christian Wood, freeing up some space in the front court, getting a pick later in the 20s, and then a bunch of expiring contracts, some or all of which they'll probably waive. They did it, I think, to move Wood out and to get a later pick. So for me, it knows they know they have their guy. And at 3, they know they're going to get one of these guys, right? If the order's jumbled in the top 2, if Holmgren or Smith slides, it seems like they're comfortable taking them. But I imagine the draft's going to go exactly the way the actual draft next week is going to go exactly the way that our first 3 picks have gone.
That's because we have the best experts covering the draft here. So it's probably going to be exactly the way that we roll this out. You got about 30 seconds here, Jeremy. I want to know, how do you think that fit between Jalen Green and Paulo Banchero is going to work? Are there enough shots to go around between those two?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, I think one of the sort of underrated things about Paulo, who I have at number 2 on my own board, is he can play both ends of the 2-man game, right? Like he can be the screener and he can be dangerous, or he can bring the ball up. Like they did that a little bit at Duke with Mark Williams screening for him. So like, I think with Jalen as a player, as talented as he is, I think you get 2 guys like that and you try to get them to build chemistry. And I think it can work. Like they're both, unselfish enough. And particularly Paulo, like as Sam said, he's a really, really good passer, which sometimes gets lost in the whole dialogue about him. So I don't see why it can't work. You have to figure out what to put around them. But those 2 guys together, I wouldn't have any concerns about. No.
So the top 3 in this draft, I think all of us kind of agree are a consensus, which means we're moving to the number 4 pick, we're moving to Sacramento, where you never really know what's going to end up happening with the way that they draft. So Ryan, this is on you. There's a lot of pressure, man. This is the kind of the first decision point and inflection point of this draft. Who are you going with number 4?
And Rob, that's why when Jeff asked me to do this mock draft, I said, I'll do it, but I want the 4th pick. To me, this is where the excitement begins. The top 3 went according to form. Obviously, Sac made a big deal last year, bringing in Domantas Sabonis. and De'Aaron Fox. As we know, they unfortunately have the longest playoff drought in NBA history, which they would like to end. So I'm going to throw a curveball here. I'm going to trade this pick to Indiana for Tyrese Halliburton. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep the pick and draft Jaden Ivey from Purdue. I understand that's controversial, given De'Aaron Fox's place on the roster, and given that a year ago they did something similar. In fact, in the last couple drafts, they drafted Halliburton, who was an excellent pick. Obviously, he's now in Indiana. And then a year ago, drafting Mitchell when they were backcourt heavy. But I give Monty McNair a lot of credit. It's not easy to do. He has drafted consistently. They've drafted the best player available, in my opinion. It just happens to be in the backcourt. So I'm going to do it again here. And I agree with what Matt said earlier about Jaden Ivey. I wouldn't at all be surprised as we look back on this draft in 5 or 10 years and say Jaden Ivey's the best player to come out of the draft class. I know those front court players are getting a lot of attention, but I think this kid's a Ferrari. I mean, the way he moves with the ball in his hands is different. It's Ja Morant-like, it's John Wall-like pre-injuries. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as those guys. Obviously, Morant is an MVP candidate, but this kid has a special gear. And I think with the way the NBA is going and the lack of contact with the ball handler, it's going to be really difficult, if not impossible, to stay in front of Jaden Ivey.
As the guy picking number 5 for Detroit, I am right now absolutely devastated. Matt, I'm going to go to you real quick on this. How do you fit all of those guards together in the backcourt? How do you make that work?
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a great fit. And on our mock draft on Basketball News, I do have Jaden Ivey going number 4. I think this is a strong candidate to a pick that could be moved. I know there's a lot of teams that feel the same way that Ryan and I do about Ivey. And I've heard the exact phrase Ferrari when describing him before too. And so I have a hard time seeing Ivy slipping past 4, but I'm not sure it'll be to Sacramento. So we'll see.
Sam, any takes on this? Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
I was just going to agree with what Matt said in that I don't think the 3 picks get traded. The first 3 picks get traded, as we said here a week before the draft. I think this pick is very much in play for all the reasons I mentioned. Sacramento wants to win. They have a backcourt in place with Fox and Mitchell. If they can get a win now player, I think they trade out, they drop down. They want to win, and this pick has a lot of value to the other 29 teams.
So I will be making the 5th pick in this draft, and one of the things that I have written down for Detroit is find a way to get Jaden Ivey. I think that with the Pistons, you have Cade Cunningham, and I think Cade Cunningham is going to end up being a superstar as this thing kind of plays out. I think you build everything around him, and then kind of figure out everything else beyond that. I think Cade and Jaden, to me, is the perfect combination in the backcourt. So if you can find a way to get up to the 4th pick to get Jaden Ivey, if you're Detroit, I think that's what you do. Beyond that, their needs. They need talent, they need athleticism, and they need shooting. I think that Sadiq Bey and Jeremy Grant are kind of nice pieces, nice rotational pieces, nice guys to put around someone like a Cade Cunningham. I'm not sold on Killian Hayes. I wasn't sold on him before the draft. I'm not sold on him now after his first 2 seasons in the league. I think you do eventually need a pick and roll lob threat for Cade Cunningham. I don't think Marvin Bagley or Isaiah Stewart are going to be the answer long-term there. So at this point, given who's on the board, I think I would go with Keegan Murray simply because of the fact that he's 6'8". He's got a pretty good wingspan. He's a very good shooter. We know he's a scorer. And the idea of being able to put Cade Cunningham out there with Keegan Murray and Jeremy Grant, assuming he's back, and Sadiq Bey, all of a sudden you have 4 guys that are pretty switchable, that are all 6'8", that all have pretty good wingspans, that can all kind of make shots. And all of a sudden you have a lot of space to let your superstar operate. I didn't see anybody react too crazily to that. So I'm going to go to you, Jeff. Tell me why I'm dumb. That's what you're the best at.
I can do that well. But here, listen, in terms of fit, you're right. I think Keegan Murray is the safest pick, and he fits what they need the most. Again, to me, the hard thing for Troy Weaver here is going to be passing on a kid like Shaedon Sharpe, who you don't know enough about, right? There's so many mysteries with him. You haven't seen him. He looks great in a workout, especially if he's making shots in that workout, which I've heard he's done enough of them. So that's what I'd be worried about. But yes, I think Keegan Murray is a solid pick, but again, probably swinging for a double instead of maybe swinging for what could potentially be a home run.
Yeah, Jeremy, I want to ask you about that real quick. What do you think his ceiling is? We got about 30 seconds here before we got to get to the 6th pick.
Yeah, the player that I've used, I think, a lot with Keegan is like John Collins in terms of like not like a direct comparison, but in terms of like the productivity that he brings, and like, you can debate, how valuable, Collins is, and obviously he's a guy who's come up as a trade possibility, but like, I don't see how, any issue with Keegan as far as just getting to that level, just because he plays so hard. He fits with so many different types of players. He's active. I actually think he's an underrated athlete. Like, having seen him a few times this year, he moves better than you think. He gets off the floor pretty quick. So I think there's enough there with the shooting and the rebounding that he's a pretty productive player, if not an all-star. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think he could end up being a Cam Johnson kind of a guy at the next level. Just hangs around the league for 12 years. All right, pick number 6. We have the Indiana Pacers on the clock, and Matt Babcock, I am going to you.
No, thanks, Rob. Hey, first of all, I'm disappointed in your pick, because if I'm the Pacers, I want Keegan Murray in the worst way. I think he fits that team so perfectly as a face-up four. They've got somewhat of a logjam on the perimeter. I think there's questions whether Brogdon or Buddy Hield are going to stick there long term. So for me, if I'm looking at the Pacers, I'm going with the best player on the board. To me, is Benedict Mathurin. I was tempted by Shaedon Sharp's upside, but Mathurin has upside, and I think he's somewhat of a safe pick. Just an incredible athlete that shoots the ball well, and I think he's got potential to be a good defender. Some people might think I'm a little bit of a homer since I'm a U of A alum like you, Jeff. So, but I'm going with Benedict Mathurin.
Goodman, I'm going to you first on this one. That's your boy. That's your Wildcat right there.
Yeah, no, I think it's a hell of a pick, and not because he's an Arizona Wildcat, just because, again, you look at what he can be, right? I mean, he's got the size. He's the prototypical wing. And the biggest thing that he did was he expanded his game this past year. He went from a guy that was, to me, kind of a, single dimensional, just a shooter. He was a spot up shooter his freshman year. And now he started to put the ball on the floor, get some confidence, exploded the basket. If he could take that jump and be even more confident, I think he could be an all-star potential guy, where Shaedon Sharp has that. But again, Shaedon, and we're going to keep going through it every pick here. It's just who's going to take the risk.
You're going to every pick. You're going to say Shaedon Sharp, every single one until they get.
But every GM is here because they don't have enough information on him with their own eyes.
We'll talk about Shaedon when he ends up getting drafted. I want to make one point real quick on Mathurin. Sam, he is a guy that is 6 weeks younger than Chet Holmgren. He's a sophomore, 6 weeks younger than Chet Holmgren. How much does age play into this?
Yeah, I think that we're all just like kind of acting like Ben Mathurin is this safe pick without any upside, and like he's like in the Keegan Murray class. He's like you said, 6 months younger than Chet Holmgren. He's like 6 months or 7 months older than Dyson Daniels. He's freshman age. Like, this is a really young player that has substantial upside. On top of that, I think his growth trajectory over the course of the last few years. I mean, this is a kid that was in Montreal, then went down to the NBA Academy down in Mexico City, and then went to Arizona, and there was an adjustment period when he got to Arizona. Like, I think that as he continues to get comfortable, gets more mature in the game of basketball, there is real potential for growth here with Ben Mathurin, given his athleticism particularly.
So we are now on to pick number 7. My heart palpitated there for a minute because we lost Jeremy, but now he's back to make the number 7 pick for the Portland Trail Blazers. Jeremy, go ahead. Floor is yours.
Yeah. I'm excited about this one. Dyson Daniels is going to be my pick here at number 7. One of my favorite guys in the whole draft. Someone who I think is like still kind of underrated. Like, I feel like his stock, went up around the combine, but at the same time, like, I don't know if he's like fully appreciated in terms of like, I just think his ability to play on the ball, play off the ball, defend, but I think potentially 4 positions. I think he's big enough and tough enough that he'll, eventually defend 4s in small lineups. Like, that's like a dream, player for the playoffs with the way, things are being played right now. You can't play him off the floor. You can play different guys next to him. He can get the ball at the court, and, picking here for Portland, knowing that they are, trying to keep this thing alive with Damian Lillard for as long as he is, healthy and in his prime. I think having a big ball handler like Dyson, who can, bring the ball up and allow Dame to kind of play off, but also give them a lot of defensive cover because they're going to need it with Dame on the court. I think it's a perfect fit. So if they don't trade this pick, which I would have wanted to do if you guys had let me, but you didn't. So I'm taking Dyson, and I feel pretty good about it, I think, here.
Ryan, I want to ask you real quick about this. How do you balance, if you're in a situation like the Trailblazers are, where you have an aging superstar and you're kind of in win now mode, you're also drafting a lottery, which means you weren't very good. How do you balance trying to improve, shooting for the moon, while also being able to win in the immediate term?
I think there are two paths, Rob, and it seems like they've already chosen their path, which was to hit the bottom quickly and then try to come right back up last year. The other path is a full-blown rebuild. In that case, I think Damian Lillard would go out. It doesn't seem like they're interested in doing that. So in this case, I agree. Like, I think Seven's very much in play. We've heard the rumors with Detroit and Jeremy Grant. I like Dyson Daniels a lot, as a player. And this range of the draft guys, just kind of broadly speaking, is really, really interesting to me, because this is where the variance comes in, right? We had those top four guys that I think are relatively consensus. You have a safe player like Keegan Murray. And then really this mid-lottery to me is all about your risk tolerance. Jeff's boy, Shaden Sharp, is the most risky, maybe has the most upside. Dyson Daniels, Mathurin, others in that range as well. So this is where the draft gets fascinating to me in this mid-lottery. And I wouldn't be at all surprised. We talked about a Sacramento at 4 with Portland to 7 if these picks get moved around on or prior to draft night.
Goodman, you got about 20 seconds here. G League Ignite program. Is this a good thing or a bad thing for basketball?
I don't know. I don't care, but I know Jason Hart really likes Dyson Daniels, and he coached him. So that's the biggest thing to me is Jason Hart really liked his work ethic. Said he shot it better towards the end of the season. So I trust Hart in his assessment.
That's how it goes with us. I don't know. I don't care. That's what I get from Goodman when I ask him questions. All right, Jeremy, we are going back to you. We had a little bit of an issue with the picks getting traded the day before this mock draft was to happen. So Jeremy's making back-to-back picks. You have the New Orleans Pelicans at number 8. Who do you got, Jeremy? Mute. You're on mute. You're on mute.
I was on mute. I couldn't. I'm just so excited to take another Jeremy here. I'm taking Jeremy Sohan from Baylor, who is, another guy who I really like. I think probably a little bit, maybe more controversial here at this spot. But I love the energy he brings. I love the way he kind of is in the middle of every play. He's not a guy who's going to have to score a lot early to be valuable. But the other stuff he does is going to get him in the game and give him a chance to develop and get a lot of minutes. Like, it's not a direct comparison, but if you look at sort of the success Scotty Barnes had as a rookie, Scotty's a different level, I think, of prospect, but just it was clear that the stuff he did so well, it was important to have him in the game for Toronto. And I think Sohan, can have that sort of similar effect where, he might play more than you think, and he might be better than you think the more you play him, as a guy who can switch, who plays really hard, who I think is eventually going to shoot. He's a good passer. I see a little bit of like Joakim Noah in him in a weird way, just with sort of just the vibe he brings and sort of the way he, picks up his teammates. And I was also there for his best game of the season when they played at Baylor, or Baylor played Kansas in Waco, and I was there for that. So that kind of swayed me. So that's my pick.
Sam,
I know you are
better hair for that, Jeremy, by the way.
Debatable. I think that's debatable. Look around the room.
Sam, I know you are a certified Jeremy Sohan stan, so I want to know your take on this young man.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I have Jeremy in a very similar, area of the draft to where Jeremy Woo does, and I love him defensively. He's a legit 1-5 switch defender, and those guys are in precious few commodities in today's NBA. Jeremy brought up Scotty Barnes, and even Scotty struggled with guards this year in the NBA occasionally. And I think that Jeremy Sohan is a bit better defensively than Scotty is. The thing is that he's not quite as good offensively. The thing that I particularly like about this fit in New Orleans, though, is that New Orleans loves these guys that are super versatile, positionally versatile, and then they think that they can teach them to shoot at some point because Fred Vincent is there. He's one of the best shooting coaches in the NBA. And I think that this would be my ideal landing spot for Jeremy Sohan. Like if I was picking purely on behalf of the prospect as opposed to on behalf of the team, I would love for Jeremy Sohan to end up in New Orleans.
You got about 10 seconds. Why?
Just because of the shooting. I think he'd really absolutely be able to improve the shooting a little bit quicker here.
All right. Well, Jeremy Sohan is off the board at number 8. I am picking number 9 for the San Antonio Spurs. And my decision, I don't know if this is what they would actually do, but I think that the Spurs are very much in talent acquisition mode. I think they need to add good basketball players and as many good basketball players as I can, because if you look at their roster, I think that they're kind of lacking in good basketball players, which is a problem when you're playing in the National Basketball Association. I think DeJounte Murray has been He's been good. He's been a little bit of a pleasant surprise. And I think they have a lot of wings and a lot of guards on their roster. So again, picking a wing and a guard and a guy that's going to kind of play the same position as maybe a Keldon Johnson and Devin Vassell and Alani Walker is maybe not exactly what they would do. But again, just acquire talent, which is why I am taking Jeff Goodman's favorite player, Shaedon Sharpe, with the number 9 pick to San Antonio. Goodman, I'm going to open the floor to you. This is your guy. You love him. You are on the record saying that he is better than Zion Williamson. So take it away.
More impactful. If he had stayed in college, he would have won more tournament games than Zion Williamson. That's what I said.
This is an insane take, by the way.
I agree.
It would have been true. He listen, Shaedon Sharpe to me, I think has a chance to be the best player to come out of this draft. I really believe that.
What percent chance?
I don't know what percent, 12%. No, I don't know. But listen, all I'm saying is Shaedon Sharpe in the right situation, I think can be a hell of an NBA player. I'm not sure San Antonio is the right situation because he's going to have to deal with DeJounte Murray having the ball in his hands. So I don't think he's going to see the ball a whole hell of a lot, number one. Number two, I don't think he's going to be set up to succeed. Not a lot of talent, but I think he put up numbers there. I think he get a hell of a second contract because he put up big-time numbers for a team that's not going to win a lot of games. But what Shaedon Sharpe is a 6'6" wing who, if he works his ass off, will be able to score from all 3 levels. And that's the biggest question I have for him. And that's the biggest question NBA guys have as well. Work ethic. Will he work hard enough to become a really, really good NBA player?
Yeah, Ryan, when you're making a pick on someone that's coming out of high school, I don't know if you've ever had to do that, but there's so much that's unknown. How do you go evaluating a player?
He did with the Celtics.
Yeah. How do you go evaluating a player like this?
My first 3 years with the Celtics, Rob, when I was working alongside Danny Ainge in the front office, we drafted Kendrick Perkins, Al Jefferson, and Gerald Green, 2003 to 2005, and then they changed the rules. It's very difficult. To Jeff's point, you have such limited information. Probably actually more about Shaedon Sharpe now than you did about those guys because the video quality is so much better, more reliable stats from the AAU circuit. But this is a gamble, and this is a home run swing. I will say this relative to San Antonio. There are questions about when Pop's going to retire. If they draft Shaedon Sharpe, he may just do it and say, you know what, I'm not going to see this. I'll hand it off to Quinn Snyder or somebody else. Let him develop this kid.
All right, Ryan, we are going right back to you with pick number 10, the Washington Wizards. What do? You got Brad Beal there, and I don't know about all that much else. So where are you going with this number 10 pick?
Yeah, this may surprise some people. I guess we're getting to the range now where there's probably more variance on different people's draft boards at 10. I'm going to go with another wing out of the Big 12, Ochai Agbaji out of Kansas. I really like this kid. I mean, his productivity speaks for itself. And I like the fit a lot in Washington. I think he's exactly what the Wizards need. They need a versatile wing. They need who can shoot it, who can defend, and also, frankly, can play right away. Given Brad Beal, I'm thinking everything I've heard that Brad Beal is going to re-sign the deal, long-term max deal in Washington with the Wizards. But as you guys know, in today's NBA, that doesn't mean a whole lot. Just because he signs it doesn't mean he's going to be there for 5 years or whatever it is. So I really like Agbaji. I think he's underrated relative to some of the other prospects in this draft. I know he's a 4-year college player, and executives, including myself, tend to pick apart these kind of guys. Most outstanding player in the Final Four on the best team in the country. I like his strength. I like his athleticism. I really like that he improved as a 3-point shooter. I thought he could make shots off the catch or off the dribble. Has the potential to be a good on-ball defender. So this may not be a grand slam pick, but I think you're getting a solid rotational player who could be a starter and is a perfect positional fit for the Washington Wizards.
Matt, let me ask you a question. So Ochai Agbaji was one of the most improved players in college basketball last season. How do you evaluate a guy that may have already made his leap, or is he already a finished product of an NBA player?
I mean, it's different. I mean, he's definitely a plug and play guy. I mean, we've all followed him since he stepped foot at KU, and I mean, right off the bat, I mean, he was so impressive physically and just continue to get better. I remember last year we had him projected as a 2nd-round pick pretty much the entire year. He came back, and I was at that. I think Jeff, you're at this game. I think both of you guys are at this game opening night in Madison Square Garden. He was terrific and really never looked back the whole year. And so I don't know if there's a ton of upside, but I mean, the guy's going to be a good player. I mean, he's supposed to be a great kid, good athlete, and he does the number one thing. He shoots the ball. So, I think it's maybe a touch high for him, but not a bad pick by any means.
Rob,
Jeff,
part of my thought process and my bias here is my last draft of the Phoenix Suns, we traded for Mikal Bridges, and I like Mikal better than this kid, but there's similar concerns about Mikal, you know, multi-year college player. What is his upside? How good can he be? Well, he was just second in the league for defensive player of the year and is the best, you know, most versatile defender, one of the best 4 players on the best team in the league. I'm not saying Agbaji is going to be that, but I think often everybody, including myself in the draft, tends to pick apart some of the veteran guys and think they don't have the ability to continue to advance. And I think Agbaji is at least a solid starter on a decent team.
That was definitely what we would call a humble brag, saying that I was the guy that helped pick Mikal Bridges. So we are now on to pick number 11. Matt, I am going back to you. You are drafting for the New York Knicks. If you guys are watching this and you're a Knicks fan, make sure you hit that like button on this stream right now so Matt can pick the guy that you want.
They're probably not going to like it. I mean, I'm sure we all feel the same way. When we update our mock drafts, we always, I always think twice about what I'm doing with the Knicks pick because that's where I'm going to get roasted. So thanks for giving me this pick, guys. But yeah, with this pick, I mean, the Knicks need more talent, and I'm going with the best player on the board. I'm going with Johnny Davis from Wisconsin. I think he's the guy that probably peaked a little early during the season. I mean, he was getting some hype as a potential, top pick. I never really thought he was quite that, but he's a dang good player. 3-level scorer, and he is tough as heck. I mean, that guy really competes, defends, he rebounds. I think he's tough enough to handle the bright lights in New York and give them an additional piece as they continue to build.
Sam, we've talked about this off air. I'm curious, how do you see him fitting in the league? Is he a guy that can play the one? Is he a guy that can play off the ball? Is he a little bit of a tweener? Where do you see him best long term?
Yeah, I think he's definitely an off-ball, 2 guard for sure. I was really happy that he measured really well at the combine. That was one concern that a lot of scouts had. Just how big is he? Is he, 6'3" without shoes on, or is he more in the 6'4.5" where he's 6'6" in shoes, and that might be okay for him to slide down to the 2 and the 3 defensively. I love his defense. I think that he's going to fit really, really well with Tom Thibodeau if he ends up in New York. He's the kind of guy that I think rookies have not tended to have a lot of success in the Thibodeau scheme and in the Thibodeau regimes that he's been a part of. But Johnny Davis is such a competitor that I can see that working. I'm a fan of Johnny Davis. This probably would have been my pick as well. I think that under the bright lights of New York, he is someone that would absolutely succeed. He would thrive in that setting. So, whether or not it's a great fit with RJ Barrett, I think is something of a question, just given the fact that they both do like that mid-range area a little bit more than you would like to see from a modern day offense, given that neither of them are wildly explosive or phenomenal 3-point shooters. But, those are problems that you figure out down the road, I think.
Jeremy, we got about 40 seconds here. I'm going to go to you. He was the runner-up for National Player of the Year. How do you see that kind of impacting to the next level? We see a guy that's ready for the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think with Johnny, and I say this having gone to 11 Wisconsin games this year, which is probably more than I will ever go to in my life. I'm in Chicago, so it's a quick drive, but I think the intangibles are a really big part of the sell here. You talked about, him versus Sharp versus Mathurin, those 3 guys. I mean, I think Sharp and Mathurin, it's easier to look at them and see, the athletic stuff, but Johnny's makeup is part of why he had such a good year battling through injuries. And I think it's going to matter at the next level as well.
And yeah, he's going to have to be ready for it because that New York media is going to be coming for him. Coming up, we have pick number 12. We are going to Jeff Goodman. We are going back to Oklahoma City. You didn't get your boy Shaden Sharp at number 2. Who are you taking at number 12?
Sam Presti has the worst shooting team in the NBA. The NBA, you don't win without shooters. And the best shooter maybe in this entire draft is AJ Griffin, who was injured coming into the season and still shot 45% from 3 this year at Duke without getting a ton of reps. Obviously he had to share the wealth with a lot of guys on that team, including Paolo, who we picked number 3 tonight. But I think Griffin's got the size. He can obviously shoot the hell out of the ball. I'm not sure if he's going to be like a 3-and-D guy because I don't know how good a defender he's going to be at the next level. I think that's going to take time for him. But, certainly Dad being a former NBA player and coach help with his transition and his readiness. But I think Oklahoma City's got to get a shooter, and AJ Griffin's the best shooter on the board.
Yeah, he's worked his way through some injuries over the course of the last 2 to 3 years. Even in the preseason, he had another knee injury. I think it was a meniscus, if I'm remembering correctly. I don't have it in front of me. Sam, I know you've talked at length about him. I know that he's a little bit of a polarizing guy. He could be one of the 3 or 4 best players in this draft. He could also be a guy that does nothing more than make threes and not guard. How do you feel about AJ?
Yeah, I think that you have to start with the shooting. Like Jeff said, he is a genuinely elite shooter. I think he's the second best shooting prospect in this draft behind Jabari Smith. And anytime that you can get that guy in the lottery, especially in the back half of the lottery, I have no problem doing it. Having said that, the reason that I don't have him as like the 5th or 6th guy, given the fact that he genuinely has a chance to be a high level shot creator, is the defense. It's a real tools versus tape argument. He is 6'6". He is has like a 6'11" wingspan. He is very capable of down the road becoming a good defender, but the tape this year at Duke is horrible. Like, he is a very, very bad defender. He was this year, and that's okay. It's not to say that he will be long-term. He was an 18-year-old playing college basketball, but I didn't like the way that he fought through screens. I didn't like the way that he was aware and engaged off the ball. I thought that he just didn't really do a good job on the ball. Even like it was just a mess all across the board, and he has potential at some point to be a good defender. I'm not writing him off long-term. It's just the tape is not very good, and you have to gauge how to, how you think he can grow on that end.
Matt, you got about 10 seconds. Wrap it up. Give me a take on AJ Griffin.
Yeah, I mean, he's a little one-dimensional, but the one thing he does is very valuable, is shooting the ball, and he's able to create his own shot too. He's got a sweet step back. But Sam, your concerns, I share the same.
All right. We are moving on to pick number 13. That is Jeremy. It is the Charlotte Hornets. They are building around LaMelo Ball. You have 2 picks, two of the next 3 picks if you're Charlotte, Jeremy. So as you kind of walk through making this pick, take me through the thought process of what happens when you have 2 picks that are that close.
Yeah. Well, I think, again, were we able to trade around, I would have looked to move at least one of these picks. I just think it's a good value proposition. You kind of know, like, you can think about it both ways. Like, you can trade 13, having look, obviously Charlotte needs a big. Cleveland, I don't know which of you has the Cleveland pick, but I doubt you're going to take a center, right? So like Jalen Duren and Mark Williams are both on the board right now. I don't have to take that guy right now. I can take that guy at 15. So like, knowing that we can't make trades, I'm not going to take a big with this first pick. I'm probably going to take one at 15 in about 5 minutes. But, here with 13, I'm just going to go, I think, straight upside here. I'm going to go with Ousmane Dieng. The NBL flavor will continue here in Charlotte. And I think he's a guy who definitely improved his standing with the NBA. Like, at the middle of the year, I think people were not really sure what to make of his struggles in Australia or with the Breakers. His last 6 weeks were just much, much better. And you could see it on tape that was starting to click for him. And I think, with his size and length and smoothness, he doesn't have a lot of like athletic pop, but he can really pass. And I think he's going to shoot. And I think Nick Batum has been used as a comp by people, and that's kind of the idea. So I'm going to go with that. I just think having a big wing in Charlotte is kind of helpful with what's on the roster right now. And then I'll get my center in, the next pick at 15.
Goodman, do you know anything about Ousmane Dieng?
Not enough. No, not enough. I know he came on late. I do know he came on late, but I was going to ask Jeremy more of and Sam and those guys, who is he like and what's his game all about? So you guys know more about
Sam,
him.
you're in Australia. You got about 45 seconds here. Just give me kind of the top down view of him.
The Australian correspondent. Let's go. I finally have use living over here. Look, I think that the Batum comparison is right. Just he's less athletic is kind of the issue. Nick Batum, when he got to the NBA, was an incredible athlete. And, you see similar processing speed. You see similar ability to handle the ball at 6'9" that Ousmane Dieng has. And that is valuable. And I think he has real defensive tools as well. It's just going to be a project. He's never, outside of these like last 6 weeks of his NBL season, hasn't really shot the ball consistently. So I think that that's going to be the key for him, just being able to shoot the ball consistently over the course of the early portion of his career.
So there you have it. Pick number 13, Ousmane Dieng from the New Zealand Breakers. Matt, we are going to you for pick number 14, the Cleveland Cavaliers. They have a lot of interesting pieces. I think this is a team that could end up being pretty good pretty soon.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Cleveland has done a great job of going into rebuild, and they're already competitive. I think they're ahead of schedule, really. And interestingly enough, I think their books are pretty clean as well. They're right at the cap. They got Kevin Love and LeVert's contracts coming off after this year, and they're able to add another lottery pick here. I'm going to go with Malachi Branham, keep him in state in Ohio. And to me, he fits right in. I mean, I'm a big fan of Darius Garland. I think he's really made a huge jump this past year. He's great with the ball, very crafty, creator for himself and teammates. And they have a lot of lineup flexibility too. They played huge this year. They played Markkanen, Mobley, and Gerald Allen together a lot. And I think Branham's a guy that doesn't need the ball in his hands to be efficient, be an efficient scorer. And so an off-ball scorer that's very mature and composed for a guy that's, coming off his freshman season, just a great fit all the way around.
Yeah, I think you also have enough good defenders on that team to make up for the fact that I don't think that Malachi Branham could guard anybody that is currently on this show. Ryan, I want to ask you this. So let's pretend that Jalen Duren went like number 11, right? And there's only one of those kind of elite centers on the board, and you want one if you're Charlotte. If you're Cleveland and you're picking 14, and you know that there's only one guy left, and Charlotte is picking 15, how much leverage do you use? How do you kind of move that around? How much does your phone ring? People looking for trades? Are you calling other people? Take me through those moments.
It's one of those situations, Rob, where as an executive, you try to get out ahead of it, especially if you're president or GM. If you see this scenario coming, you have the guys or women on your staff getting in touch with other teams, say, we're wide open, at pick 14, 15, whatever it is, bring us your best offer. We have other, you try to create this frenzy and let people know the pick is available. You're not really specific about what you're looking for, what you want. You just say, look, we've had previous conversations. We know you guys have interest in trading up. We will trade the pick. Bring us your best offer. And hopefully you have multiple offers to sift through. The thing, it's hard to do. I mean, you really have to have a lot of courage to do this, is if you draft a player you don't want, and then you think you can later flip them. I've seen teams get in trouble doing that. So usually as you see the draft unfold, you try to get out ahead of it. And then hopefully with the 5 minutes on the clock, say, let's put everything up on the board, weigh all these offers we have on the table versus picking a player, and then decide which path is best.
Matt, put yourself in Cleveland's shoes. Are you shopping this as much as you can? You got about 20 seconds here.
I mean, honestly, if I'm any team, I'm always shopping the pick and seeing what options are out there. I mean, I think that's a general manager's job is to continually pursue every opportunity possible to improve the team. So yeah, I would. Every pick would always be available on some level or another if it were me.